When I'm walking down the street.
I do want to say to Doni and many of you in this room that over a very long career in this city, all of you have helped me and my colleagues tell the truth and to try to tell.
I may not look like you and you me, but
my head up.
I'm from South Carolina, so I just.
What does this event mean to you, Miss Peggy Morris?
Oh, my heart.
Happy 20th anniversary.
My heart is about loving up on my sisters. Do you know what it feels like to have your sisters in the room? John.
And dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. I am beautiful, I am blessed, but not just what you see in the flesh. I'm free from people, free from myself. There's a
the doctor lived next door to the janitor, to the reverend, and the lawyer. We were together. Now we get so high and mighty that you create stress for your society because you don't like poor black folks either. That's a health problem. Get yourself together so I can stop being taking care of geriatric people and get back to pediatrics. I thank you, Doni, for all you've done. Let's keep doing it all and more.
letting His glory shine through. Dare to be you, dare to be me, dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. And I dare you, I dare you, I dare you to be you.
First name's Doni, last name's Glover. In it to win it for the long haul, baby. Wow, it's June the 13th, and we are here. This year is moving along so swiftly. Special thank you to Dr. Tyrone Taborn of STEM City, USA. This segment is brought to you by that very fine entity, Career Communications Group. Today we have with us a STEM guru. Let's join with Dr. Sandra Johnson. Good morning.
Good morning, Doni. How are you this morning?
I'm blessed by the best. No need to be stressed. Keep my head to the sky. No need to cry because ain't nobody going to listen. No way. How are you?
All right. I am fantastic. I am blessed.
Where are you from?
I am from Lake Charles, Louisiana.
Louisiana. What do you know about Louisiana history?
What do I know about Louisiana history? Well, it started with the Louisiana Purchase.
Yeah, it did. And that expanded the country another 2/3, didn't it?
It certainly did. And it sort of whittled down to the state of Louisiana. I'm from the southwestern part of the state. Acadiana is what it's called. And many people who were in Arcadia in Canada migrated down to Louisiana, and they became known as Cajuns. With the culture and the food, etc.
They came from Canada?
Canada, yes.
Wow. Why did they come down?
They were kicked out of Canada. Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Tell me more.
And so they sort of clashed actually with the Creole culture of New Orleans. And so they sort of migrated a little west of New Orleans, sort of the outskirts of the city. And they kept their culture, the French-speaking people.
So this was this was before the Louisiana Purchase that they came down?
Yes.
So do you think they came down with the understanding, I guess that would make sense, that
well, they knew there were French-speaking people in the New Orleans area, and so they were kicked out by the British
in Canada.
And yes, and they migrated to New Orleans actually, and then they were kicked out by the Creoles out of New Orleans because there was a culture clash there, so they moved west. So Acadiana, the heart of Acadiana is this town called Lafayette, Louisiana. which is about 70 miles east of my hometown.
Wow. Now this is, I guess, after the Revolutionary War, because the British, I'm trying to imagine all of this.
I cannot remember the exact dates.
Because the British,
but I will look it up and I will share that with you later if you're really interested in the dates.
I really am, because being a Black journalist, and I have a new book that's coming out. I announced it yesterday, Journalpreneur, my third book.
Wonderful.
We think in this country, thank you, that the first Black newspaper came out in 1827 in America, but
okay.
in Sierra Leone, a Francophone country, a French-speaking country,
yes,
they actually had the first newspaper more around 1800, 1804. And then the Haitians, another Francophone country, partially anyway, had the second Black newspaper. But as you look up Sierra Leone, that's where British expatriates went after the Revolutionary War. When the British lost to the U.S., they fled. They fled to Nova Scotia. And so the first Blacks that were repatriated back to Africa for the British came from Nova Scotia. It's just amazing that intertwining of, so the British are getting chased out, and then the British chased the French out. if it went that way. Fascinating. The one thing I did write about in my second book, I Am Black Wall Street, is how there was a man in Louisiana named Henry Adams. And Henry Adams was also interested in sending Blacks back to Africa. But on the American side, we went to Liberia.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, and they actually, the capital of Liberia, to this day, it's called Monrovia, named after the U.S. President James Monroe.
Didn't really pick that up.
Yes, because the migration happened during his administration.
Now, you also had the Spanish there in Louisiana.
Yes. Yeah. So I actually grew up, I am not Cajun or Creole, but I grew up with many Cajuns, you know, French speaking with French names. So I was immersed in that culture.
But you don't parlez-vous français?
Just a little, not much.
Did you pick up any cuss words? I found that is always a great way to learn another language. I'm sorry.
Of course I did. And so many times as I grew up and I was around people who did not speak English, I would share a few words with them. Smile.
So which culture dominated?
Where I grew up, Lake Charles, it was the Cajun culture. You know, gumbo. I know you've heard of gumbo.
I love gumbo. I've been to Louisiana once, and I got some gumbo. I got some etouffee.
Etouffee, crawfish etouffee is my favorite meal. Yes, I grew up eating food cooked by a master Cajun chef. So I do have very discriminating taste as a result. I didn't know that the food that I ate was some of the best in the world until I left Lake Charles and traveled the world.
I think our Baltimore, Maryland crab soup will give your gumbo a run for the money.
I don't know.
My mama made a Maryland crab soup. Lord have mercy. But the gumbo, I hold them both in high regard. But I got to put my mama's Maryland crab soup above everything now.
Well, you know, and of course I have to do the same for gumbo. But, you know, I don't mind having a taste test.
Do they do a lot of, what would be more New Orleans, a tomato base or a cream base?
Oh, it's a cream based. Cream based.
Because here that Maryland is the red one. Is the red base where the cream of crab no doubt is cream based, but I'm very much biased for the
Now
Maryland.
with gumbo, it's roux.
Right. I was just getting there. What is etouffee, and two, what is roux?
No, the etouffee is the cream-based sauce, right? Butter cream-based sauce. And roux is essentially a mixture of oil and flour. And it has to be overheat, and it has to be cooked just right to get the nice color and a little bit of flavor as well.
So
I'm not a cook, but I've spent many years watching cooks make it. I can cook, but I am not a cook.
then there's the
I just don't want all of your viewers trying to contact me to ask me to cook for them.
So tell me more. Look, you've got French culture, you've got Spanish culture. Is there, would you agree there's some influence of British culture in Louisiana?
Well, I think there's probably an influence of British culture throughout the United States, given that we were, former U.S. colony. So yes, to answer your question.
So since you've been all over the world, maybe you can relate. One of the things I find interesting is here in the United States, the slave trade, in contrast to South America, was at least 100 years later. The Spanish, the Portuguese, they had been all through South America. Here they'll say the 1619 Project.
Yes.
They were hustling enslaved, trafficked Africans in South America at least 100 years earlier, the Spanish and the Portuguese. I mean, as you know, Brazil has the largest population of blacks outside of Africa.
That is true. And many people don't know that, but that is absolutely correct.
But I think the Portuguese may have only just did Brazil. The rest of South America was Spanish.
Yes.
And
yes.
I don't know if we make the connection that Columbus is heavily responsible for pioneering that effort. He got money from both Spain and Portugal at the same time.
Yes.
Yet he didn't know where he was going. I think it was Pedro Nino Alonso who guided him across the water. And then one last historical fact, because I know we have a book to talk about, is that before Spain and Portugal got to crossing the Atlantic, they were dominated for 800 years by the Moors. Did you know that part?
I didn't know 800 years. The amount of time I did not know.
So when Ferdinand and Isabella moved into the Alhambra, they were getting hand-me-downs from a Moorish king.
How about that?
How about that?
Yes.
Well, we've gotten off to a real start. I will say this too. I have a lot of love for, I went to New Orleans, but when I was there, I tell you, a lot of love. I see similarities between New Orleans and Baltimore, my hometown.
Mm-hmm.
Both port cities.
Yes.
Now, one thing I know that you have there that I don't believe is up here. You have drilling. Drilling is an industry off of the coast of there in the Gulf Coast, right?
Yeah, that is correct. Yes.
And then I don't know. We may have to just do a part 2 to this. There's also the Florida influence. A lot of people don't know, for instance, that Spain owned Florida until 1831. So I write about it in this book that if you were enslaved and you could make it to Florida up until 1831, as long as you were willing to convert to Catholicism and fight for the Spanish crown, you could get your freedom if you were an enslaved person.
Now, I didn't know that. So that's interesting as well. I'm going to have to get your book and write a good review.
And then there's the other thing that came to me last night. There's this presumption in America because of ignorance that all black people were descendants of enslaved Africans and that all white people were descendants of slave masters when that wasn't the case. There were enslaved peoples on both sides, but there were also free people on both sides. Not all black people have a history of enslavement in this country.
Like my husband, who was born and raised in Namibia in Africa.
Yeah, but there's some African Americans, and so there was a lady here. She just got her wings to glory. God bless her soul, Dr. Helena Hicks. And she was the first person that I have ever met of color in this country who says she traced her roots all the way back across the Atlantic, and she could not find any history of enslavement. And I saw a picture recently with white slaves with chains around their neck, all from Rome to England. So that picture of slavery is very distorted. There were people in chains in all races.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so we're supposed to be talking about science, technology, engineering, and math.
That is correct.
I would have done better in algebra if I knew at the time that algebra came straight out of Egypt, straight out of Africa.
That is true. Some of the best mathematicians during a certain time frame were out of Africa, Egypt and Mali, for example.
Home of Mansa Musa.
Yes.
The richest king who ever lived. But had I known more of our influence, that we started math and that the Greeks stole it, appropriated it. They come up with these philosophers, Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, so on and so forth. All they did was went across the Mediterranean to Africa, stole the stuff, come back and put it in their own words, including religion. My God, what they did to religion. But anyway.
So I think I'm going to have to come back if I get an invitation from you so we can talk about this, because I have a passion for Africa, especially technology in Africa, so we can have that discussion.
What countries have you been to?
I've been in North Africa, Tunisia, in Sub-Saharan Africa, Ghana, Senegal, Nigeria, East Africa, Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, further south, Malawi, South Africa, Namibia. I know I'm forgetting some. Zambia, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Mauritius.
How many languages?
I know I'm forgetting a few, but you get the picture.
How many languages do you speak?
I speak one, English.
But you've been to all of these countries. I know you done picked up some Swahili, some Wolof.
Yeah, just a little bit of Swahili. I lived in Nairobi, Kenya for a while, so yes. Over
there where the Mau Mau rebellion was.
That is right. Yes.
I was in Tanzania.
I was there working actually for IBM. I was based in Nairobi, as I said, and I was the Chief Technology Officer, a CTO, for IBM Central, East, and West Africa. Oh, I forgot the Democratic Republic of Congo as well, DRC.
What should African Americans know about the natural resources in Africa?
Africa has more natural resources than any other continent. They are rich in diamonds, gold, and other minerals, and also in arid land throughout the continent. In fact, many countries of the world are taking advantage of that land to feed the people in their countries and not the continent of Africa.
My father and I agreed on most things. The one thing we disagreed on was Africa. I am a Pan-Africanist. I think of folks like African Americans like Dr. Leon Sullivan, who gave us 9 years of the African American Summit. But my father was very pessimistic about the future of Africa. And maybe that was due to what he knew at the time. But I have a lot of hope for Africa. As a matter of fact, when Muammar or Muammar Gaddafi got killed, he was in the process of helping to organize one currency for the entire continent. Do you think that would have changed the game for Africa? I mean, the Europeans had the euro. Do you think, an African currency, a singular currency, could have improved the financial trajectory of the continent, of the motherland?
I think it may have helped, but there are many issues in Africa that need to be addressed. But what I want to do is tell you about my introduction, if you will, to Africa.
Come on with it.
And I write about it in my book. Can I show a picture of my book?
Please do.
South Power for the Journey, The Life of a STEM Trailblazer. I'm the first Black woman to earn a Ph.D. in computer engineering, electrical and computer engineering. And I worked for IBM for about 26 years, then left and started my own company.
The first Black woman?
Yes.
In the United States?
Yes.
Or in the world?
Well, I don't know about the world. Maybe.
Maybe the first Black woman in the world with an electrical engineering and computer science degree in engineering.
No, computer engineering.
Sure. First Black woman with a PhD in computer engineering. Yes. Quite possibly in the world.
Yes. Yes.
Is that what you started out to do when you were a little girl?
No. When I was a little girl, I did not know what I wanted to do. I was very good at math and science, and I enjoyed it, which was important. And so I had many adults around me who encouraged me to pursue medicine, to become a medical doctor. And I can't stand the sight of blood. So that was not an option for me.
My daddy was the undertaker. I couldn't stand the smell of dead people. And that was not an option for me. I can relate, sister.
So yes, so you certainly understand. So one day when I was a senior, and I'm a junior in high school, I received a letter from the Engineering Summer Institute at Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and HBCU, I might add, describing the Engineering Summer Institute for high school students. And so I applied for that program because it enabled me an opportunity to get away from home and spend a summer on a college campus, living in a dorm. And so I was interested in getting away from home so that I would not have to do chores like washing dishes. So I applied for this program thinking that I was applying for a program to go learn how to drive a train because I was not familiar with the other engineering profession. I was accepted into the program. And then it was only when I went and started taking the classes that I understand that the other engineering profession, and I fell in love with electrical engineering, felt as though this is what I was born to do and still feel that way. Got excited about it. And that's when I made the decision to pursue electrical engineering as a profession.
I've heard this before where a person had to explain to their parents what engineering is. How was it explaining it to your parents?
My mother, because my father was killed when I was 2 by a drunken driver in a car accident. So my mother, she didn't care what it was as long as it enabled me to have a good quality of life when I graduated. So even though I tried to explain it to her, she did not care, that she did not understand.
It must be rough.
However, I must add that when my father was killed, my mother went back home to Lake Charles because they were living in Massachusetts with her sisters and their spouses. So my extended family of my aunts and uncles and cousins, right? All of us, or the overwhelming majority of us, are engineers now. I was the first, so I started a trend.
What's your husband think of this?
Think of what?
Your career.
Oh, well,
Your
he's a computer
money.
scientist. He's a computer scientist. So this is home for him too. He's a software engineer.
Two brainy people.
I would not argue against that.
Whew. Wow. So how did Dr. Tyrone Taborn come across? How did he learn of you?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I worked for IBM, and there was a time during my IBM career where IBM and Career Communications Group had a partnership, and it focused on Black Family Technology Awareness Week. And there were 4 IBMers who served as sort of ambassadors for IBM for Black Family Technology Awareness Week. So we made ourselves available and open to speaking engagements, media appearances, etc., talking about Black Family Technology Awareness Week in partnership, if you will, with Career Communications Group. And so that's how I met Dr. Tyrone, and we have been acquaintances and more over the years. It's been over 20 years, 25 years or so.
I should say that this segment is brought to you by STEM City USA. Kudos to Dr. Taborn. When was your first public speaking engagement?
Probably when at church growing up as a teenager, or maybe before I was a teenager.
So you weren't shy?
I was very shy.
How'd you find your voice?
Well,
let me tell you, you're not shy anymore.
I had a mother who made me do it.
Tell me about
Get out
that.
there and discovered a talent for speaking, right? And so in my church, New Emmanuel Baptist Church in Lake Charles, Louisiana, every third Sunday of the month was Youth Sunday. So the young people more or less were on the program for playing, being the musicians, of course, singing in the choir, the ushers, the junior ushers, and from time to time, even the speaker was a young person.
How was your church? Was it because I've been to a Presbyterian church and it's real, real segmented, real stiff, 20-minute service. Or was Lake Charles, was it, you say Emmanuel? Was it a whole lot of?
Yes, a traditional type of Black Baptist church.
Y'all stood up and made a joyful noise.
A joyful noise, yes. And so many times I spoke at programs at my church. I was also a musician. I actually played the organ every third Sunday of the month during Youth Day and at funerals.
So you play the organ. That means you down with the Hammond.
And the piano.
And the piano. So you can do the foot pedals on the organ and play at the same time.
Yes, I was trained on a pipe organ.
Wow. I'm impressed. Whew. Lady, you are heavy. This is very heavy for early in the morning.
Oh, come on. We can make it light.
Okay. No, I'm thoroughly impressed. As the father of a daughter and 2 granddaughters, I'm always encouraged to hear of stories of strong women, including when I was in Louisiana and I saw the school named after Harriet Tubman. That just blew my mind because I had no idea that she was revered so much in Louisiana. It just blew my mind.
Yes.
So let's get into SKJ Visioneering LLC. That's your company, a technology consulting firm. You're an independent. You've been an independent director at Regional Management Corporation, which is on the New York Stock Exchange, serving on its risk and corporate governance and nominating committees. Now that's just a half a semester right there in learning what the heck all of this is. She's also an independent director of Pan American Life Insurance Company, PALIG, serving on its audit and finance committees. Dr. Johnson has a certification in climate leadership from Diligent, and is a director certification from NACD. Dr. Johnson is the first African American woman to earn a Ph.D. in electrical and computer engineering. 26-year career at IBM, including serving as a CTO, IBM Central, East and West Africa, and CTO, IBM Global and Medium Businesses. She is a master inventor. My God, this is only part 2. A master inventor with over 45 pending and issued patents and over 80 technical publications. Dr. Johnson earned BS, summa cum laude, MS, and the Association for Computing. Now I know there's something get left out there. And the Ph.D. in electrical engineering from Southern University, and the Association for Computing Machinery. She's also an IEEE Fellow and an ACM Distinguished Engineer. I mean, you need a publicist just to remember all of this stuff, lady. What's all of this stuff?
So I'll give you a summary or overview of.
Can you break it down for the lay person? My God, you need a PhD just to understand the abbreviation.
Okay. So this book goes into detail. It's not a technical book, right? It's written for young people up to 100 plus year olds. So I wrote it in a style that's easy to understand, because my objective was to encourage and inspire those who aspire to do great things, or to do things that they feel as though they were born to do. So, so I shared with you a little bit about my childhood in high school, and how I arrived or learned that electrical engineering is what I was born to do. I'll show a little bit more about the journey. So I went to a segregated school in elementary school. Integration came to my hometown right before I started the 5th grade. So then I went to an integrated school for the 5th and 6th grades, although integration for elementary school meant the teachers were integrated. The students were still all Black. And then when I went to junior high school, because at the time it was called junior high school, and for me that was the 7th, 8th, and 9th grades, because the high school that we fed into did not have the capacity for 9th graders. So junior high school was integrated, 60% white, 40% Black. And so that was the first time I attended a school with white students. And so it was adjustment. We more or less, we being the Blacks and the whites, unfamiliar with each other, kept to ourselves. However, when at the end of my 8th grade, I ran for student council president and won. So my 9th grade year, I was the president of the student body.
When is your birthday? What day of the year are you born?
What day?
Yeah.
September 19th, 1960. I say that because it's the first line of my book. So I have no aversions to letting people know I'm 63 years old right now.
So people, I know about you Virgo women, always taking over something. Okay, tell me more.
Me take over? I'm more of a collaborative type of person.
Michael Jackson was a Virgo. He was king, he was the king of pop. You like the queen of STEM.
So, again, being a very shy person, but it was my ability to speak well that moved people.
And you
So,
attribute that to church?
yes, it was
I
a skill,
started in church too.
a skill honed in church. Yes, absolutely. And so, at the end of my year 9, still junior high school, is when I learned about this thing called valedictorian, right? So one of my aunts, she's at the end of the year, and she saw my grades, and she said, "Okay, let me look at your grades." And she saw I had A's and B's. She said, "Oh, you're not going to be a valedictorian because you have too many B's." And I didn't know what she was talking about. And so then she explained it to me. So I knew going into high school that I would not graduate at the top of the class. I didn't even know what that meant until I had the conversation with her. So high school for me was, I focused on just learning and not trying to get the best grade possible so I can graduate at the top of the class and go to a good school. High school was about learning, which is what I focused on. Again, math and science is what I enjoyed. No, there were no teachers, and high school was integrated, 60% white, 40% Black as well. There were no teachers or administrators that really drove me or pushed me to do well. It was internal for me
What
to
are
do
those
well.
6 things? What's that behind you on the wall? I see 8 of them that look alike. Are they all
Those
degrees?
those are plaques. You know,
Oh.
you mentioned that I was a master inventor. And so as an IBM employee, if you receive a certain number of patent applications or other recognition when you go through the patent process, you reach a plateau, and each plateau you get a plaque. And so most of the plaques behind me are plaques for reaching plateaus, patent plateaus at IBM. I have over 45 issued and pending patents.
You say it like it's nothing.
Well, for me, it's nothing. It's second nature. I shouldn't say nothing. It's second nature for me. And I will repeat this mantra over and over with something. It is something I was born to do. So it is second nature to me.
You said that twice now. So when did you know this was your calling? I guess around junior high school?
Yes. No, high school.
High school when you did the internship?
Yes. The Engineering Summer Institute for High School Students at Southern University.
In Louisiana?
Baton Rouge, Louisiana, yes. And HBCU.
It's just amazing how far you've gone and how it all started. But I see it, we see it all the time. I see people, I live here in West Baltimore, and for me, one thing my parents instilled in me is that I could do anything.
Yes,
I can
absolutely.
do anything I put my mind to. But you and I'm sure you've seen it as much as I have, not more, where we don't come to believe in ourselves, or we don't have that encouragement. We don't have that auntie to tell us about the valedictorian. And today our young people are inundated with the social media, with the cell phone. My God, I see parents putting it in the hands of 2 or 3 year olds to occupy them, as some parents did with television back in our time. I'm just wondering, how do we take what's inside of you, put it in a container, and mass distribute it across Black America and the rest of America for that matter? But we got to start here at home.
Absolutely. Yeah, I believe all people are born with certain innate skills and abilities that need to be honed. You can say it's their purpose, it's their destiny. Most people don't take the time to find out what that is or to discover it. So they're sort of like a feather in the wind, just, going from place to place, if you will, job to job, or even, career to career, if you will. But so for me, what I try to do is encourage and inspire people to find their purpose, whatever that is, because that's something you were born to do, something that you have the skills and abilities to do well, and as a result, live well as a result. So one of the things I try to do is to be visible, that someone like me who grew up in a single parent household, right, who struggled, right, who didn't even know what it meant to have a credit card and finance charges on a credit card, knew nothing about finance, knew about having a job and doing well, but not a career, and that is a difference. Certainly didn't even know about engineering and getting a graduate degree, a PhD in the field, and became a global technology leader, a supercomputer expert, right? That was not something I was remotely aware of as a child, but I knew this is what I was born to do. And so I learned and I studied and I focused in high school. In college, I graduated at the top of my class in college, #1, the student marshal. Went on to graduate school, Stanford University, electrical engineering department, one of the top departments in the United States and globally, and on to Rice University to get a PhD, right? And to become a supercomputer researcher at IBM, right? Now, I face obstacles along the way, no doubt about it. I've been told you're in the right place, you don't belong here, you name it. But I had 16 years, that's including the 4 years at an HBU, of people telling me I can do anything I wanted to do, study hard, this is what you were born to do, etc. So by the time I faced people who shared their opinions with me about what I could and could not do, I knew they were mistaken and unenlightened.
I love it when they tell me what I can't do.
Yes. So it's interesting. So I want to share with you why I decided to get a PhD, because initially I had a fellowship that was a PhD fellowship, but I did not want to get a PhD because you had to stay in school too long, and I wanted to get out early and go and get a good job and make a lot of money. That was my objective. But when I was a student at Stanford University, the electrical engineering department there was a professor emeritus named William Shockley, a well-known physicist, a Nobel Prize winner in physics. But as a hobby, he conducted research that he said quantified that blacks were inferior to whites.
Oh, really?
And he was the emeritus professor in my department.
Oh,
and
wow.
I did not know this until I ran into him. And one of my friends who was with me said, "Do you know who this guy is?" And I did not know. And so once I learned, I'm sorry?
He was the king of ignorance.
The king of ignorance. So once I learned about him and what he did, I had an "I'll show you" attitude.
Yeah. I
said, okay, I already have a fellowship to get a PhD. I may as well stay.
How you like that, Professor Emeritus Dr. Shackley? How you like me now?
Yes.
Wow.
That was my motivation.
Yes.
So and many times when people would say you're in the wrong place, I don't think you're going to make it here. That was my motivation to say, I'll show you, right?
You were exactly in the right place.
Right. And so, they use it as a mind game to try to discourage, right? But for me, it was just the opposite. It was the fuel that I needed to do well.
You love it when somebody tell you what you can't do.
Yes.
You know, Beyonce is a Virgo. My daddy was a Virgo too. Y'all always trying. Michael Jackson was a Virgo. God daggone perfectionist. Woo.
I'm not a perfectionist.
Oh yes, y'all are. Stop that. Stop.
Well, I'll share with you. You know, I reached a point in life
Got
where
45
it's
patents.
good enough.
You know,
Good
first
enough.
black woman electrical and computer science, computer engineer in the world. Oh, I'm not a perfectionist. Oh, okay.
I just do good enough. I mean, I do good enough because no one's perfect.
I didn't say you were perfect. I'm just saying y'all are always
Aspiring for perfection.
Yeah, that thing right there. Yes. I was raised by a Virgo. I know. I bring home a 95. I'm all happy. And this cat who knew every bone in the human body had the audacity to ask me, where are my other 5 points? Huh? Man, you better let me go outside and play. God rest his soul. Tell me about these patents. When did you find out that black people who enslaved Africans with an invention could be easily set free? That was a pathway to freedom. Did you ever come across that historical?
No, I have not.
I mean,
No, I have not.
black
But I can tell
inventors.
you about patents and how I learned about patents.
Come on.
When I first started working for IBM after I graduated from Rice University to earn a Ph.D. And I started working on a project. And when I shared the initial results with my manager, he got very, very excited. And he said, "Oh, we can file a patent application on this." And I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" Right?
You didn't like him saying we?
No. I thought that one had to invent or come up with a creation, if you will, and build it that changes the way we live in this global society, right? In reality, yes, you can get a patent to do that, but the overwhelming majority of patents are about, in the case of engineering or something technical, something that you do not have to build. You can just describe it in a way that someone who is skilled in the art, who's an expert in the area, can build it. And it can be an improvement over an existing idea, something that is new, that contributes to knowledge, if you will. You can file as a patent application. And so once I learned that I knew as a PhD, you produce something that is a contribution to knowledge, right? So I was trained to do that. So that's why for me, it's second nature. And so
you don't have to
be a patent application on this work.
And you don't have to be the patent. You don't have to be in engineering to come up with a patent. You can be in, could you be in literature and come up with a patent?
Anyone can come up with an idea that may be patentable. Anyone. You don't have to be technical to do that. In fact, I'll share a story with you because I remember a business dinner one time. I'm sitting down at a table and some of the folks at the table were in human resources. And so one of the women said, "Oh, I'll never have a patent application." And, you know, I was like, "What do you mean? Anyone can get a patent right?" And so she didn't believe me. So I said, "I'll tell you what." We were in New York at the time. I was living in Austin, Texas, and so was she. So when we get back home, let's get together for happy hour. And we can sit down and brainstorm some ideas. And I can assure you, out of that, we can get a patent application. So it was 4 of us all together. And, every Friday for several weeks, we would get together for happy hour. and brainstorm. And out of that, we filed a number of patent applications, and one of them actually became a patent. And she was so excited that she shared this with all of her friends. So yes, anyone with an idea, again, it has to be something unique and different, new, that contributes positively to the global society that we live in.
So this is only 9 minutes left, and this is just I feel like I've known you for a lifetime or two.
We can come back. I can come back.
You must come back. Tell me about your entrepreneur. I mean, you get this whole thing, you got this career, you did this East Africa, West Africa, South Africa, Namibia, home of the oldest DNA on the planet Earth. But then through all of this, I'm just really, I see nothing but God in you. The power of God and what we as a people can do, what anybody can do. But then you have the audacity, the gall to start a business.
The unmitigated gall.
Unmitigated gall. Thank you.
To start a business, yes. Yes. So
which is Herculean behemoth at minimum.
Well, I am guided, if you will, by my favorite scripture. I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. So
John
what's starting becoming an entrepreneur after a 26-year IBM career? I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So how did I go about that? Well, when I was my last IBM role, CTO in Nairobi.
Medic, I need a medic. This is mind blowing. I mean, I can. John 3:16. Yes, I can.
Yes. All things, not a few things, not just one or two things. ALL, all. I believe that. Okay. And I try to live that.
But everybody can't do that. I find most people are 9-to-5ers or entrepreneurs. You did them both seamlessly, seemingly.
It's a mind thing. If you believe you can, you can. It's a mind thing.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah. As a man thinketh, so is he.
That's right. If you say you can't, you can't.
So I'll share a little bit about the entrepreneurship story. And if you want to have me back, we can keep going. So when I, my last few weeks, if you will, in my role in Nairobi as a CTO at IBM, I thought about what I would do next. I was living in a place that was a cash-based society, but they didn't use cash because they used mobile money, right? Now, we're familiar with this now, with Zelle and Cash App, et cetera. But, 11, 12 years ago, it was not as popular as it is now. But it was in Kenya. And so...
because of necessity.
Well, yes. Necessity. Most of the people there are unbanked. They do not have bank accounts, but they had mobile phones. So money was transferred back and forth through their mobile phones. The mobile phone company provided this service.
Including WhatsApp. That was a part of it too, right? WhatsApp?
Well, WhatsApp. But in Kenya, Safaricom provided this service called M-Pesa. M-Pesa, right? And it took off, immediately after the service was provided. Became very, very popular. Even when I lived there, I used M-Pesa, to pay for goods, services, grocery, you name it. And so my initial outlay into entrepreneurship, I started this company called Global Mobile Finance, Inc., which enabled those who live in the West to send money home to family and friends using mobile money. So funds are deposited directly into their mobile money accounts. And so I did that for a while. I also because I traveled around the continent and I met many leaders of companies, the technical leaders as well as the CEOs, and learned that many of them needed to have someone with deep technical skills to have conversations with the IBMs of the world. So I started this technology consulting business to serve as the liaison, if you will, for these companies, and that has expanded to helping small businesses with cybersecurity, with AI, etc. So that's my entrepreneurship story in a few minutes.
What do you think of AI?
AI has the potential for significant good and significant things that are not so good. And it's up to us as a society to ensure we have the right guardrails to focus on the good.
Do we have enough Black programmers?
No, we don't.
Is that a part
and
of
hopefully my journey can encourage and inspire others to pursue.
Why do we need more Black programmers when it comes to AI?
Well, I'll give you, well, there are many examples, but one example is much of the work that's done, and I'm talking about AI in general as well as generative AI, is based on programmers who program in a certain way. So if you have a programmer who will program based upon their own experience, right, and they're not Black or a person of color, then you're going to miss some things as you program AI into many different products. And it's not going to be as optimal as it can be. So for example, you can miss, early on, when you go to wash your hands and you put your hands under the faucet and it automatically comes on. Initially, that didn't work because it did not recognize the hands of people with a lot of melanin. That's an example, because the programmers didn't think about that.
What does that mean for Africans and African Americans and people of color across the world?
Well, I think it's a tremendous opportunity for entrepreneurship for Africans in AI. Is a tremendous opportunity.
I mentioned earlier Dr. Leon Sullivan. He is one of the first people I learned about who was doing something that hit me when I first went to graduate school. I was looking at Botswana, which has more diamonds than South Africa, and I was looking at African American economic cooperation, and you are a quintessential example of that. When I did go to Africa, I went with a gentleman whose son's from New Orleans, and he told me that we African Americans are the modern day Josephs in the Bible. Even though our brothers sold us into slavery, we became the head of the country we were sold to and ended up feeding them when they were hungry.
Now, I have a long story to share about that.
Take your time.
I agree with you.
Take your time.
But next time. I'm sorry?
Can you share it now?
Oh, I can share it now.
Well, sure. We own this network.
So when I was, I guess, 15, 16 years into IBM, and I was focusing on what I should do next, I was introduced to a man who's a pastor of the church of one of my proteges, right, who had this vision of creating a technology park in Ghana. And so my protege, she thought it would be good if I met him because maybe I can help him with this project. So I met with him. He's also a traditional leader in Ghana. So he asked me, have you ever been to Africa? No, I haven't been to Africa. well, is this something that you would like to pursue? Well, yes, I'm open to travel anywhere, right? And so based upon those conversations, I agreed to help him with his nonprofit to lay the groundwork for this. And the first thing we did was we planned an African Technology Conference in Ghana. So my first trip to Africa was to Ghana to help plan this conference. And while I was there, I visited a slave castle, right? Now, prior to this, I didn't even know slave castles existed, right? But this was a place where captured Africans were sent and packed into the basement of this castle, like sardines, awaiting the ships. They were placed on the ships to go to the transatlantic voyage. And so when I visited this slave castle, it was a very moving and spiritual experience for me. As I was walking up the ramp, I started having visions, seeing people from hundreds of years earlier who were there. I didn't, it was very surreal to me. I didn't know what was happening, but I saw them and went on a tour of the castle. The tour guide was very, very good. This was the Elmina Slave Castle in Elmina, Ghana. And as part of this tour, there's this door of no return. It's really not a door. It's like two concrete slabs that are wide enough for a human to go through. And on the other side is a ledge that's about 5 feet above the ground, facing the Atlantic Ocean. So each person on the tour, if they so chose, was able to go through this door and stand on a ledge. And so as I stood on this ledge overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, I had another vision. I saw the slave ships. I saw the slaves going into the slave ships. There was a plaque at the beginning of this slave castle that more or less says, to all who enter here, may you never forget the horror of this place. And may those of you who are descendants of the people who have gone through this place come back and help rebuild the continent. And so as I was on this ledge, overlooking the Atlantic Ocean with visions of the slave ships, I knew that I was one of these people, a Josephine, I like to say, to come back and help rebuild the continent.
Would W.E.B. Du Bois be proud of you? Do you think W.E.B. Du Bois would be proud of you?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And thus my quest to look for opportunities within IBM to be on the continent of Africa.
So how'd it go with your husband? I mean, this man has married a goddaggone genius, has a genius beside him. How does that work?
Well, we're newlyweds still. This August, it will be 3 years. So I actually met him in North Carolina, where I live.
Wow.
Oh, he thinks it's wonderful, wonderful. He's like, can I carry your suitcase for you?
Because you are indeed a queen.
And he is my king.
Ashe. These visions, I guess, what do you think of having these visions? I mean, you make me think of Harriet Tubman. The story goes that she was hit in the head with like an anvil. And I don't know if they kicked off epilepsy or something, but she would start having visions. I could hear my daddy from heaven saying, young men have dreams, old men have visions.
That's what I was thinking.
Really?
It doesn't happen for me that often, but most of the time, this was not one of the times, because this I could see in the past, but most of the time it's seeing into the future, a seer, if you will.
Forward.
I'll give you one. I'll give you another example. Okay. There was a time when I would have visions and I would see people in a place that was not familiar to me, but there were people from many cultures, many races, all walking and just going about their daily lives. And I would, see that most of the time right before I would go to sleep or right when I would wake up, over and over again. And I couldn't understand what was happening. But as I mentioned earlier, when I started looking for opportunities to work in Africa, an IBM job in Africa, I found one that essentially had me move to Dubai. So I lived in Dubai for 2 years before I moved to Nairobi, Kenya. And my role there was a Middle East and Africa role. And I spent quite a bit of time traveling throughout the continent of Africa. I mentioned earlier the many countries that I've been to in Africa. It was
Malawi,
through
Mauritius,
these jobs.
Namibia.
Right. It was through this job. And so I accepted this position, had never been to Dubai. But once I got to Dubai, what did I see? I saw people from various cultures and races walking about their daily lives. And then I remembered the visions that I had. What I was seeing in those visions is what I was living when I went to Dubai.
I'm a little. It's always interesting to me when I hear our people separate from this conversation. I want to go to Dubai. I want to go to Dubai. I want to go to Dubai. God, they get on my nerves with it. I'm like, do you even understand where you're going, what it's all about, how it came about? And how come we're not saying that? I want to go to Malawi. I want to go to Mauritius. I want to go to Zanzibar. I mean, so, and I don't know that we're always well received in these places. Why do so many African Americans, you think, want to go to Dubai?
Okay. So it's interesting you would ask that because there was a time I have a really, really good friend, also, she's a retired IBMer. And every year we would get together at the beginning of the year to plan a trip somewhere, right? And so the year I started working in Dubai, but before I even knew about that opportunity, at the beginning of that year, we talked about potential places, and she brought up Dubai as a place to go for a vacation. And I was like, no, I'm not feeling Dubai. I'm just not feeling it. So we decided to go on separate vacations that year. And so, 4 months later, I learned about this position, and it was a Middle East Africa role. So the guy who hired me said, you have a choice of living in Johannesburg, South Africa, or Dubai. And so I chose Johannesburg. And then once I started going through the onboarding process, I learned that, you have to pay taxes in South Africa, whereas in Dubai, there's no income tax, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to Dubai because I can keep my income in South Africa is taxed. So that's how I ended up in Dubai.
Did you like Dubai?
Dubai, yes. Once I learned how to keep my mouth closed most of the time and not strongly articulate my opinions, it was fine.
What do you mean?
Now, I spent most of my time traveling all over the place. So, but the time that I was there, living there, it's very different. It's a Muslim country, but they're very relaxed when it comes to the rules for expats. They try to encourage the world to come, right, and visit, and you can't have too many restrictions if you want to do that.
You have to tell them, because I know where you're going, and So there, for instance, there are travel advisories for Americans who go to Middle Eastern countries, Arab countries, Muslim countries. There are travel advisories of, for instance, that suggest what you should wear.
Yes, yes, mm-hmm. Yes, yes.
So you can't dress like you're in Miami Beach.
You should not. There are many Americans and others who do go there and dress that way, and they're taking a chance when they do that. Right.
There you go.
I've had acquaintances, for example, who may have a meeting scheduled, a business meeting, and they were stopped at the door because their skirt was too short. It was like right at the knee. So I had to go buy another skirt that was longer in order to go to the meeting, right? That doesn't happen for everyone. It depends on who's at the door in this case. Right?
What do they think of African Americans in Dubai?
I did not have any issues. So for me, I can speak from my experience and those other African Americans that I knew. We did not have any issues, but we knew what the rules were. Follow the rules, right? You don't drink and drive, but you shouldn't do that here either, right? The one thing I can say that was different is that if you are arrested, you are guilty until proven innocent.
So for those of us who don't know what Western is, what is Western?
Western?
Western, yeah. When you say if you are Western, I mean, if you say that to maybe the average person on the street, they say, I'm not Western, I'm from East Baltimore.
Western, from my perspective, is, west of the Greenwich Meridian, of the earth. So if you're from Europe and the United States, etc., yeah, that's West.
So the Western Hemisphere.
And that comes with certain cultures and understandings that's very different from Middle Eastern culture.
So can a Black woman from America go to Dubai and be the same personality that she is here, like hypothetically forceful, aggressive, loquacious?
Well, I could do that at work.
I've heard of classes where sisters get over there and they don't realize they're in another country and they don't tolerate that. Like when I went to Jordan, there were weddings every day. Why? Because if a woman gets caught having premarital sex, she could get stoned to death. Or I know in Saudi Arabia and other Arab countries, they have what is called chop, chop, square. So you go over there and you got sticky fingers and you done stole somebody's stuff, you're going to come back with a hand missing. Yes. They tell me, I don't know how true it is, that one of the world's most popular boxers was detained in an Arab country as of late because there's some question of him owing them money. Different world over there.
Yes. One thing I can say is anytime I go anywhere outside of the United States to travel, I do my due diligence. Understand what is the culture, what you, quote, can and cannot do, unquote, from a cultural perspective. I go to the U.S. State Department's website that describes, this in detail, and it talks about the travel advisories, et cetera. So I do my homework and understand where I'm going, or try to a certain extent. And then once I'm there to, abide by the recommendations, if you will, right? So as I mentioned, I spent almost 2 years in Dubai. Now, my first encounter was when I tried to get a bank account, and, I asked a few questions that the bankers were not happy with. They were not happy with my tone and how I asked. And so they just stopped communicating with me. Now, in Dubai, the way you get paid is through a bank account. So I needed one. So I actually had to get my IBM finance colleagues to call the bank because this was an IBM bank. And
You
that's
went
how
over
I
there
got my
talking
account.
smack to the people. You better give me my damn money, and I ain't
Oh, no,
playing
you
with
can't do that. You can't do that. Right. I mean, they had the upper hand, right? So,
you. You got your hand in the lion's mouth, so you had to ease it out.
so, so I finally did get my account, and then I just from then on, all of my banking I did online. But once I learned how to tone it down, when I was in certain
What do you mean
spaces.
tone it down?
Well, you know what you described. Who do you think you are to talk to me? You cannot do that. Talking to certain people, right? Not if you wanted to be treated with respect, right? So, I and this is something that you learn to do in corporate America as well. So it was not a problem for me because I
When
had
in
already
Rome,
adjusted.
when in Rome, do like the Romans.
That is correct, right? And so that's what I did. And it did not require me to shift, if you will. So I was able to be myself, as you said. It's just every now and then, if I get upset, then I learned how to not share what I was thinking in a passionate way until I was at a place like home where I could.
Have you been to the White House?
I have been to the White House on a tour. Yes.
I think you should be working at the White House somewhere. Anyway, we're going to have to bring you back. Why don't you take a moment and I'll give you the full screen and you promote your book. Tell people why they should tell them what it is, why they should get it, and where they can get it.
Soft power. Oh, here we go. Okay. Soft power for the journey, the life of a STEM trailblazer. You can get the book at Amazon.com right now. You can go there and purchase it, or any bookstore of your choice. This is the story of my life. It's my memoir from birth until last summer. So it's not just about my career, but my entire life, the good, the bad, and the ugly, in proportion to how I experienced it. I wrote it to encourage and inspire anyone to be the best that they can be, particularly those African Americans, African American women pursuing STEM careers. But it has an appeal that's much broader. So go out, go to your favorite bookstore online and get your book today.
And what's your message to our little Black girls out there? 70% of our households are single mother. I never heard you say one word of victimhood when it comes to losing your dad at the age of 2 or not having that influence. Single mothers are all over our community. And then there has to be a word for what you want Black men to do, as well as others, but we're starting in our own community. So what's the message to the sisters, the little girls, and then what's your message to those that look like me?
You can do anything you want to do. It's within your power to do it. If you know that this is something that you want to do, you have the skills to do it, you were born to do it, then don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You are the captain of your ship. You steer it in the direction that you see fit. Don't let others determine your life. You determine your own life. Believe it. If I can do it, so can you. So go out and do it and make it happen.
How can people follow you on social media, Dr. Johnson?
At Dr. Sandra KJ, that's Facebook. The same for LinkedIn, Instagram, and X.
And what'd you say you think of Dr. Tyrone Taborn?
I think he's a wonderful visionary. I love his conferences. You know, it's like the Academy Awards. Thank you, Tyrone, for your vision. And I just think he's outstanding. He's doing great work for the community, and keep doing what you're doing, Doctor.
Mind blowing. Up to day, down tomorrow. Thank you. Do your day and everything will follow. Nothing to it but to do it. I got to do it regardless of how I feel. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the first Black woman engineer, computer engineer, electrical engineer, guru. And we didn't even talk about, you know, because they try to say that all of the technology in Africa came from outer space. I didn't even get to ask you about intergalactic travel, but we have a visionary. Do your day and everything will follow. Nothing to it but to do it. I got to do it regardless of how I feel. I am somebody. I am my brother's keeper. Good morning, world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.